first, I wanted to introduce Tomi. Tomi Pitkänen is the head of IT security at Neste, and he has a vast experience in IT and cybersecurity, more than a couple of decades. Boy, that's a long time in this region. He's going to have some very good insights for us to share as well. And aside from that, and also being recognized as CISO of the Year previously, he's also the author of a book that might interest a lot of you. Automation security and how to create secure for critical productions. So that is going to be very interesting to hear from Tomi. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Tomi. Tomi, I hope you're there with us.
Thank you very much. And I'm so pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you. So very warm thank you of the invitation on this one. Yes, my name is Tomi Pitkänen, CISO from Neste Corporation. Neste is a Finnish company, but a global presence. And I have multiple roles, also in addition to Neste as a CISO, but also other kind of cybersecurity forums, activities, few mentioned in this line. So in Finland, we have this cross-industry information sharing groups, and this energy group I've been the chair for the last eight years, and that consists of roughly 20 to 30 Finnish energy companies. So anything happens in the critical infra in Finland, so we try to maintain the stability in Finland that you can load your mobiles and use the electricity in the long term to make sure that everything is on the safe side. EXO CEC member, that is a pretty new one. We are supposed to meet first time sometime late this January. So CEC is the CISO's European community under the ECSO. ENISA source, I've been doing some research on ENISA and providing information for their publications in my history. And as Jasper mentioned, the nomination of the CISO of the year 2018, which was very kind of pleased to me. I won't bother you any slides from Neste as a corporate presentation, but I would love you to see a short video regarding to it. So we can go and check out the video now.
This is a box. It represents 10 million tons of oil. All these boxes combined represent the current global consumption. These grey boxes represent the amount of oil used in transport, for example in cars, trucks, planes and ships. We need to reduce the amount of fossil fuels we use, fast. The question is, how? This is a blue box. It represents the amount of oil saved by electric vehicles. But this is where we stand today. The adoption of electric vehicles is accelerating, but even if we take the International Energy Agency's estimates of 600 million electric cars by 2040, this change would not be fast enough. However, there is another solution: renewable fuels. These are fuels made from waste and residues or from plants that have absorbed CO2 during their growth. These green boxes represent the total volume used today. When the new raw materials being explored go mainstream, the impact of renewable fuels can be even greater. These green boxes represent the amount of fossil fuels that could be replaced by 2040. The remaining fossil fuel use can be further reduced by renewable fuels made from algae and other processes that are under development. When it comes to reducing global transport emissions, there is no silver bullet. Only by leveraging the potential of all solutions in parallel will we meet the ambitious goals we have set. Change runs on renewables.
So that's the video from Neste. So that's my kind of operating landscape and the business landscape focused on the, as Neste is the global leader in the renewables. So that's my kind of assessment to make sure that our business is running smoothly. Hopefully you can see now my presentation. So let's go forward. My topic today for you is talk about the measures, how we measure the cybersecurity, and then a couple of topics on the IT and OT. Well, always when you measure something, you need to report it to someone. So if you have the results of the measurement, you need to show it to someone. And one of my, I would say, the cool things in the CISO role is that I need to speak different languages. So with the reports, I need to address different areas on the organization, and one of them is the board. But with the board, you can't speak about the facts typically, so you talk about the risks. So when you manage and measure something, you need to show everything that is regarding to the risks for the board. And then have the executive board, of course, when they are operating the whole company, they are interested on the facts. So then I need to switch the language to a fact language. And then when I try to actually generate the reports and the measurement with my colleagues, I somehow need to motivate them. And that is the enjoyable part for me. But hey, let's jump to the measurements. So a bit back time from the history maybe, but I believe you can find the correlation on nowadays of this one. So when we used to have these old castles, well, they still exist, these beautiful ones. But in the Middle Ages, when they had these guards on the towers, watching out people coming in and going out of the castles, they had a pretty simple task to do, just to monitor the traffic in and out of the castle. But nowadays, if we look at what's happening outside, it's not anymore enough. So the guards needs to have eyes on the back, looking inside the castle too. So kind of this multi-layer approach. But what makes it efficient? So how do you can say that this individual control in the tower or the individual is efficient and the process is efficient, what he or she is actually doing? And that, I believe, is the key for the measurement. So it's not the fact that we have this artificial intelligence, machine learning and stuff like that, different type of controls in the environment which produce you huge amount of data, how many events happening on this side, how many events this side, and how many incidents we have. So that's kind of the easy part to report. But then how to make sure that it's mature enough, the process which actually produces the information. So that's the tricky part. I would say the performance is important, and the fact that if you see that a measurement, you're measuring your process or your security landscape somehow, you need to make sure that it actually works. So something which is working, and then you need to identify also something which is worsening. So the measurement can indicate that some areas are worsening, then you can point your eyes to that item and fix it. And always when you measure something and take this kind of figures out of the environment, part of some process, it's a snapshot always. So meaning that in this moment it looks like this, next day it might look a bit different. But when you look and take these snapshots enough during the timeline, it means that then you can kind of draw a picture in your mind or in some reporting system that how the function is either a team or the cybersecurity service process is functioning over time. So that's important to have this visibility, how it actually sees in the big picture. This picture on the background in this is actually taken by me last year in Dublin. You probably, if you have visited, you know the place. It's the Book of Kells, one of the coolest libraries in the world. But I doubt that among those thousands of old books, there are not mentions very much about the cybersecurity. But anyway, you need to have a library for the cybersecurity metrics. And you need to define the goals and for the security program. So these are activities you need to actually do to make your measuring for the cybersecurity successful. And as it says in the third bullet in the material, that you need to measure the processes and controls against the business objectives. So always remember that there is the business on the background. Business has some kind of goals and objectives, and if you measure the cybersecurity against them, then you will be successful. And as you know, there's a huge amount of data regarding to the cybersecurity nowadays. We have the artificial intelligence, we have the machine learning systems, etc. So they produce a huge amount of data. To get the data out for measurement purposes, it cannot be done manually anymore nowadays. So you need to find solution to automate that thing. So how to generate and push out technology which would automate the collection of the data. That is important, because the amount of the data is so huge that otherwise you just will drown under the data without any benefits out of it. And then when the threat landscape, as we saw the castle, so it's a bit different world today than it is, but the threat landscape is changing all the time. And of course, the business is changing, so we need to adjust the cybersecurity measuring accordingly. So we need to have a process in place which actually reviews all the time how we measure, and does it still meet the needs of the different stakeholders that we need to improve something. So metrics needs to be improved all the time. So how to do it? So these are my top 4 kind of way how to measure the maturity on the cybersecurity. One is the preparedness. Patching cadence, that is a wonderful word, but really, really difficult nowadays to implement efficiently. That means the time when, let's say, Microsoft is publishing new patches on a monthly basis, how long it takes you to deploy all the patches in your environment, but it's not enough today. You need to make sure that all your vendors and service providers do the same actually. So everything that is kind of binded on technical level to your environment needs to be patched in a specific time. And that's something that you can measure. And that's a key process in cybersecurity, and you can actually measure it. Then the MTTD, mean time to detect. So when something happens, and it seems that every week or every month something big happens in this globe, then how long it takes to your team or your cybersecurity function to detect it. So that's something you can measure too. So you can get indication for different threat intel sources, but how long it takes for your organization to detect. And then of course the number 3, the resolve. How quickly your team actually responds to the threat and make specific changes. Let's say you have new vulnerability like this Log4 shell lately. Everybody knows it. It has received so much publicity that it was again something new, never seen before. So that's kind of a new type of reaction against it. So how long it took that you get kind of a complete understanding of your environments, what it actually means. Then the last one, the mean time to contain, MTTC. So when you can say that, hey, this case is now cleared. With the Log4 shell, I can't say it yet because it's not yet cleared. Yes, we have understanding what is it, but the corrective activities take so long that will take quite a long time to make sure that I can close the incident. So the work is still ongoing, but yes, it's under control. That's my part for the measurement. So let's jump now to IT and OT. That is a picture from our refinery in Finland, one of them, and these are the books. Jesper mentioned this book on the left-hand side. I was one of the writers, so it's the Automation Security Protecting the Critical Infra, published last year on May, and by the Finnish Automation Society. And the right-hand side is the ENISA communication package regarding the network dependencies on the ICS SCADA side. So I've been both on the background, so providing the content and writing the content on these publications. So quite a different type of experience in my history on the OT side, which is a key part on Neste operations globally. So we have refineries from Singapore to the Europe and to the Finland, and building new ones as we speak to Singapore. As the ICS SCADA nowadays is mainly part of standard, I would say standard technologies. So there are PCs, there are servers running Windows platforms, etc. But still there are a lot of technology which is not kind of standard when when we look at the fact from the IT on this kind of office IT point of view. And yes, there are huge amount of needs to cooperate between the IT and OT. IT, the business side, is requesting information from the OT, and OT needs to push information to the IT to make correct decision on defining on the business. But there's one fundamental difference in these environments, and that is the performance versus the IT support. So when we are on the OT side, the performance is always the number one. I can't go to our refinery and say, would you please close down the production line now because I need to update a couple of your PCs in the management system here. That's not doable. So the performance is always the number one. The amount of the factory or the refinery actually produces, well, that's the key. So we can deploy any type of controls which would kind of slow down. It's part of the key process and the business is that the performance is the key. But on the IT side, when we have these legacy systems, we have the cloud services, the main role of the IT is just to make sure that they function, they are up and running. But whether they are sometimes a bit slower or faster, so that's not always the key point. But the performance, it's not so big issue on the IT side as it is on the OT side. But the interface between the IT and OT, as the convergence says, that's the challenging part. And I believe these four, which I embedded in this slide, are saying the key kind of elements which makes the difference and makes the challenge when you try to combine these worlds together. Architecture as number one. So there are different frameworks on the background. And that means that on the OT side, the whole setup is built on different framework than the IT side. And to combine these, there are no straight lines or use this and use that to integrate them. Life cycle. There where OT side, the planning life cycle starts from 20 years onwards for a refinery, 20 to 50 years. And in IT side, you buy a new system, implement new system, the expected life cycle is 2 to 4 years or something like that. So there's a huge difference on the life cycle management point of view. That is one. Then the communication part. We have roles on the OT side. They have different training backgrounds to people, and then we have the IT side. The focus is totally different. As I showed you the slide with the performance, that is the key focus, and the production capability and the performance for the OT side. On the IT side are the business systems, which you need to keep up to date. But the interface between these is still the challenge, and it needs a lot of communication between these parties. But if you look at the roles on the OT side, so there are no strict cyber roles, at least not in our company. So you need to kind of build separate systems, processes, or groups or virtual groups to enable the communication between the IT and OT. But it's not from top to bottom solution. It means that it's always something in the between. And the number 4 here, training. And as I mentioned, when people have totally different backgrounds for training, it means that their focus is not default on the whole environment. I can't assume that our automation engineer in our refinery has a full understanding how the IT side operates and what type of systems are on the IT side, that he should have the common understanding. That's why it's difficult to overcome these challenges and make sure that the IT and OT communicate efficiently between each others all the time. But what we could gain by combining these environments, so I would say cost is number 1. So reduce the cost through the technology standards and common principles and governance. That is important to have in place. Risk management, reduce the risks. So cybersecurity is all about risks all the time. Everything is based on risks. And if you can reduce these and then make a safe integrated approach in the IT OT, that is most beneficial. Then the performance. When the systems interact between IT and OT efficiently, it means that yes, the performance is then high. And then the flexibility. When we have these cost structures on either side, we have the organization on IT organization in OT side, and they are not kind of combined. So it means that when you combine these environments and the management of them, you could get also the flexibility on the cost structures. Yes, there still is the bridge between the OT and IT, but there is a solution, or might be a solution to overcome these challenges, and it's called technology. I'll jump it a bit more in the next slide, but it means that when I have a different standard and setup on the OT side than in the IT side, I could use technology to combine them. What it actually means, it means that the technology can be seen as a catalyst of process and change. That means that if you use this technology to combine with a different standard on OT, different standard to IT, you could use this IoT technology to kind of hop over the bridge and then make them speak fluently between each others. But yes, of course, there is this security concerns always when you use the technology, but that can be managed nowadays. But I see that the IoT as a technology could be used to kind of converge these two environments in the future. But what is needed on the long term is the boots, which you can see on the bottom. So we need a persons which have the other boot on the OT side, another boot on the IT side, and looking at the big picture totally. We have enterprise architects, we have a data architects, we have a cloud architects, but we do not have yet kind of OT IT architect, whatever the name is in the future, but I do believe these kind of persons are needed to make sure that these two environments can be converged in some time. That's my message on the measurement and the IT OT for today. Love to hear some comments and questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tomi. That was excellent. You really touched on some of the key elements that I recognize from my time in Maersk as well, working with drilling platforms and drill ships. Again, as you also alluded to, the technology has a different lifespan, right? We had a drill rig that was built in 1987. So the operational technology on that rig was, of course, from that era. And then when all of a sudden you take a business decision, you want to transform into an IT-connected drill rig to measure performance in the OT environments, how do you take 30-year or 40-year-old technology and then combine it into modern and these hybrid environments, right? Without actually looking at, as you also mentioned, the bridge between them and all the challenges that comes there. And that is where you're spot on your measurements and your metrics, defining those, how good are you actually in doing this? And are you dynamic in your approach to this as well? But before I dive in, because I can ask you a ton of questions, and I really like the not only the deck, but the talk behind it. Thank you a lot for that. But I'm going to go to Fredrik. Is there any questions or comments coming in from the participants?
Let me see. No, we haven't received any questions from the audience yet. So, but I think I have one, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So you talk about measuring the cybersecurity, but how do you measure the business, the risk, and cannot compare them?
Well, the business risks comes mainly from the framework in our case. So ISO 27001 is the framework Neste is using, and that actually pretty well defines all the risk management activities. So we are having all the cybersecurity risk on the ERM level, like all of the enterprise risk management as any other corporate level risks, and they are monitored there. And that's, I believe, is the key. So Our management, I would say the executive committee, board and the audit committee, all of them are really dedicated to cybersecurity, which I'm really grateful because that helps my life a lot. So a lot of strict demands regarding the risks and the cybersecurity, but also the support when it's needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. I also like, the part about where you look at the roles that you have in the organization and you look at what is actually the requirement for, not only looking at the risk, but also looking at the opportunities. As you also said, there are great benefits to reap from this convergence between the IT and OT, and that requires skill sets that can be, just as elegant in one side as the other side, none of them being, the stronger force, if you might say. And it's also one of the things that I found interesting working previously. I'm curious to know if you have sort of done the same type of program that I did, where I created an offshore cybersecurity program to focus specifically on the education part about, so this is how IT see you in operational technology. Could you please teach us how you see us? And then we can sort of meet. So we built the frame for that role to come in. So we had a better understanding. Did you go through this similar type of journey in Neste?
Well, last autumn I went through all the executive members and interviewed them one by one separately and tried to sell also my idea how to go forward on the OT side with the cybersecurity. So there was a plan our CEO asked me a plan to how many roles, Tomi, we need on the OT side to fix this thing. I said that well, I can draw you a list how many roles and where we should put them, but I do not believe that that's the right way to do it, because we tried it sometimes in this organization with the corporate security side and it failed. But I do believe that we need to start from the bottom to the top, as we have done with the safety. So we have a strong safety culture in the organization. Now I'm trying to activate also the cyber culture in the same way that I provide training for our own employees. So the employees who are working on the OT side, I will start to train them on the cybersecurity landscape and some specific trainings for the automation engineers and general training for the others. Meaning that, yes, we're going to raise the maturity on the OT side by the training. And then when we do this cooperation and try to converge these environments, we have the resources on the both sides, on the IT and OT. But that will take some time. But that's kind of my approach to this challenge.
Excellent, Tomi. Yeah, I like that approach. Very similar to what I've gone through as well. Also creating these, and this ties very well into the resilience as well for an organization. Whenever you do test out your processes and you verify, for instance, your incident response playbooks, if you include elements from the business functions and the business units, tie them together, have both the experts from one technology arena and the experts from the other, and have them work together on also maturing that set of entry, right? That is what you can build on and lean on for years to come as well. Thank you so much, Tomi, for that beautiful insights. There was a lot of good points in there. I'm sure everybody got some good takeaways from that. And unless, Tomi, you have any questions for us, we're going to let you go and then jump back on the program. But you're more than welcome to hang around, of course. And if you have any questions.
No questions from my side. So if there's any questions for me, so please let me know. I'd love to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming in and sharing with us. Thanks, Tomi.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.